Now, what happens if the server has some sort of problem? It sends a 400 response or a 500, or there's something wrong with the server when we try to request the list item, for example. Well, to do that, we're going to need to handle the request a little differently from the default handling that our server has. So we're going to import the server, and we're also going to import the REST utility from test server. And the server is what we created with MSW's setup server, and then REST is coming straight from MSW. It's just simply being re-exported from test server. So now we can add another test in here, and it is going to be an error, so I am expecting a console error right here. And we'll have a test that's called note update failures are displayed. So here we're going to be updating the note, and we've already got a test for that. So I'm going to copy a couple of the things from here and paste it all right there. And for us, this update is going to be a failure. Of course, this is going to be an async test. And so we can type in the notes, we can do all of this, and we can even wait for that loading spinner and then wait for it to go away. But then we shouldn't expect things to actually have been updated in the database. And so now we can say to not to match this value. And our notes text area actually is going to continue to have the notes that the user typed, allowing them to try again. So we'll just remove that assertion, that's fine. And we'll just verify that the notes were not updated. And even more importantly for this test, we'll expect the screen get by role alert text content to match inline snapshot. So now before we do anything else here, we need to make sure that this request is going to fail, because as it's written right now, this request should pass. We have another test that basically does the same thing. And so we're going to use that utility that we have above to mock out this specific request. Now there's one other thing that we're going to need, and that is our API URL. And I'm going to just define that up here with API URL. It's process env react app API URL. So that environment variable is the same one that our client is using for hitting the backend, and that's what we're going to use in our mock server here. So before we start typing into this input at all, we're going to say server use, and we'll use the REST utility to handle a put request at the API URL /list items /list item ID. And this will be an async request handler that'll take the request and the response and the context. And for us, we're going to return the response where the context sets the status to 400, and the context JSON returns the JSON response for this error message. Now, our server, when it encounters an error, is going to send a status as part of this that will include that status for the HTTP response, as well as a message to display to the user. So we can just say, oh no, right here, and now we'll save that, and Jest should automatically update our inline snapshot. There we go. Oh no, being displayed to the user. And we've got ourselves a passing test. So let's just double check what we've got here. We're going to be testing the note update failure. We are using fake timers for this test because I don't want to wait for the debounce time for typing into this input. We're rendering that book screen and getting that list item. And then we configure our server to handle a put request at that list item endpoint. And it's going to respond with a 400 response with some JSON so that our code can handle this and display this message for the user. And then we clear the input and type in. We wait for that loading spinner to show up, and then we wait for it to go away. And then we verify that the alert shows up, indicating that there was a problem and displaying the exact message that we sent from our mock request handler. And then we also just verified that the list items database was not updated with these new notes.